What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another Tottenham update. And yes, you guessed it, more on Antonio Conte doing the rounds. We've got updates from various sources. Let's start off with David Heitner from The Guardian saying that it is understood that some of the players would welcome Antonio Conte leaving Tottenham immediately. There are some serious doubts over whether enough of them are still behind him. Tottenham players still believe that Antonio Conte is going or gone, according to a dressing room source, with their only question about the manager's future concerning the timeline of his departure. Unbelievable that. The Times, Gary Jacobs saying that Conte's outburst has raised the possibility of using the international break to making the managerial change at Tottenham. The Independent are saying that the mood in the Tottenham dressing room is now described as close to toxic. Many of the players would now prefer Antonio Conte gone. I see a theme happening here. Sky Sports saying that Tottenham players expect it to be only a matter of time before Antonio Conte leaves the club. Matt Law is saying that Tottenham are still considering Conte's future, with his departure during the international break looking very much a possibility. If Levy is to sack Conte, then Ryan Mason would be the most likely temporary man to be in charge till the end of the season. Levy is understood to be seeking the opinion of close advisors. Once Levy has taken advice and fully weighed up his options, Levy could sack Antonio over the international break. And finally, Fabrizio Romano says some of the Tottenham players agree with Antonio Conte. Some players feel that other players don't have the hunger and the desire that Antonio Conte has mentioned.
The PR battle is strong.
Very interesting stuff there. I mean, the main kind of message from that is that the players just want him gone, it seems, though, right now.
Well, it's interesting when you hear the reports. Some players feel this way, some players feel this way, and then you hear Romano. Now you hear Romano saying, "Well, actually, some players actually agree with Conte." It's very much a battle of PR at the moment between between Antonio Conte and his camp, and like maybe a lot of the players, or even Tottenham themselves, and what they're leaking to the press, because maybe Spurs are trying to leak all these discontent with Conte, so it's easier to get rid of him, and it's more palatable for a lot of the fans. Everything, obviously, a lot of the fans at the moment are turning against Antonio Conte, but now it looks like Antonio Conte and his camp, or maybe some other players, are leaking that actually Conte does have a point. It makes sure actually a lot of these players aren't pushing themselves to the next level, aren't desperate to win things as much as he is, and that just tells me only one player, and that's Harry Kane. Because I remember under Jose Mourinho when he got sacked, he was saying something very similar. He said he had a great relationship with Jose. They had a similar mentality together in terms of having that winning mentality. But when it came to just being men and being leaders on the pitch, that's maybe where things fell flat under Jose, because he wanted more leadership from the players. He wanted more responsibility from the players, and they didn't take it on. And we're seeing the same things now. We're seeing exactly the same things now. We're having a manager like Conte wanting the players on the pitch to take more responsibility, and the players basically throwing it back in his face.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing.
I mean, yeah, we keep saying the players this, the players that. I mean, I look at the squad now, and I'm looking at players who I think who might be on Conte's side. I'm looking at players like Harry Kane, potentially Pedro Porro, who's just come in under him, Cuti Romero, Rodrigo Bentancur, Dejan Kulusevski. I mean, I don't believe any of these players are kind of want Conte gone as soon as possible. I think it's more of the players that have been lingering around here for a bit too long, maybe the Dyers, the Sessegnons, the Davises, the players that maybe are not getting a consistent look in the team as well. I reckon it's those kind of players. But I wouldn't say it was just Harry Kane. I think there are definitely more in that camp. But, I mean, it just makes me sick. It makes me sick that every year, we get to this stage with every different manager. We heard it under Mourinho, we heard it under Poch, we heard it under Conte. Now we're hearing it under Conte. And it really does make me sick to my stomach. I mean, when are we just going to get rid of these players that keep making these noises?
And when we hear about cultural problems at Spurs, I mean, these are prime examples of exactly what these managers are talking about. And the fact that these leaks about toxic atmospheres and they just want Conte gone and all these kind of things, that tells me that these players don't have the stomach to win big things. In my opinion, and they just would rather, it's easier to throw the manager under the bus and down tools than it is to actually follow what the manager is saying and respond to it in a different way, and that points to the culture among a lot of these players and amongst the club right now, which is really, really frustrating. Obviously, Antonio Conte has to also bear responsibility for the situation we're in, because I don't think the lack of commitment from him in terms of his future and all that kind of stuff, that obviously pulls fuel on the fire, and it doesn't help the situation at all. But at the end of the day, Conte is a player that demands the best and demands always more from himself and from the players, and he's not happy when he's not challenging for big honours and big things. And other managers might be in the situation where Conte's in and actually be like, oh, I'm doing a good job, we're in a top 4 race, we're doing all right. But Conte, that's not enough for Conte. He wants more. He demands more from the players, and more often than not, the players just come back and they would rather accept the mediocrity that they're in than demand more from themselves.
Yeah, and like I said, it's absolutely sickening. It really is that we keep getting ourselves back into this situation every 18 months.
The fact that they're saying the most likely situation is Mason from now to the end of the season is like, we've been here before. Like, you know what I mean? When Jose left for the last few games, it was that we had to give it Mason for the last few games of the season. It wasn't exactly like, yeah, he won a couple of games. It wasn't exactly like he really turned it around and it was like, oh, it really let the shackles off. It was just whatever. It was just like a few mere performances from end to end of the season. What do you expect?
The only thing Ryan Mason did was get an out of form Ndombele out the team, pretty much. An in form Ndombele, out the team, because he was really starting to come along under Jose in those latter stages. But look,
do you think it's a split dressing room?
Yeah, of course there is, 100%. I have no two ways about it. And when there's a split in the dressing room, the easiest option is to get rid of the manager, bring another manager in, and get them all on side until there's another split in the dressing room. And that's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So as much as I want Conte to stay, as much as I want him to sign that contract, I think that everything that's coming out now is signalling for Conte to leave. And the way I'm thinking about it, if it's gonna fester like this in this squad, then it probably is best for him just to leave now anyway.
Yeah, but I can't stand it when boards do this. They just sack managers without a plan going forward, and they have a caretaker in charge, and they just leave the situation ongoing. I think for me, that's a signal of a lack of preparation. It's a signal of I'm not really sure what you're doing. And I think when boards do this, not just Spurs, there's a lot of boards in the Premier League that sack managers without a plan, and I don't want to see us do that. And even if it's like,
about when we ever had a plan,
even if it's like, okay, look, we're going to burn Mason the charge, but we have someone already lined up who's coming in the season, that's one thing. But like, if you're just putting Mason in charge and then pissing in the wind, that's just not unacceptable. So I don't want to see us just sacking Conte and then not knowing what we're doing, and no one knowing where, because what was going to happen is it's just going to, as much as you could say people might say it's toxic now under Conte, but at least there's someone who at the top of the food chain in Conte who cares about what's going on. And if we just sack him and we don't know what's going on, and then Mason's in charge, it's just going to be apathetic from now to the end of the season.
Yeah, but I think it's getting that way already. It's already apathetic between the fan base, the players, and if the players are gonna throw him under the bus and not play for him, then there's no point of him being here, and we may as well have Ryan Mason.
But I'd rather watch the players throw him under the bus and give them an out by putting Mason in charge.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Get that out either way. You know what I mean? So
I'd rather Conte stick there and just keep battering them every week.
Danny Rose was speaking again, and he said after that interview, I don't see how it's possible that the manager will stay after the break. I think the club has to set the stance out that the manager cannot criticise the hierarchy in public like that. Funny coming from Danny Rose.
Yeah, interesting.
I think that the next manager will be an interim. After that, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Going and getting Poch would be admitting that they were wrong. I'm not sure the club would want to admit they were wrong in sacking him, but for me, I would love for Poch to come back.
Well, they were wrong. I think that's fair. I mean, I don't know. I don't see how you can't see that they can't see that they were wrong at this point. So
they might be able to see that they're wrong, but maybe they don't want to admit they're wrong.
Why not? I might as well admit it because it's been just terrible ever since they sacked him. To be honest, like in terms of the strategy of the club, they've just been all over the place, and they haven't dealt with that situation at all. If you're going to bring in managers like Conte and Mourinho, then you have to make sure that they have world-class players at their disposal, and you have to make sure you give them the squads able to compete. And if you're not going to do that, there's no point having them around, and we're seeing that now. We've seen it for the last few years. So they have. Everyone can see that they're wrong. Everyone can see it in world football, the fans, everyone. So they might as well just admit it.
Yeah. Next up, let's talk about Harry Kane. Gary Jacob from the Times is saying that Tottenham want £100 million up front in one upfront payment to consider selling Harry Kane this summer. Spurs hope that the asking price will deter Manchester United. And then he goes on to say that Tottenham do remain quietly confident that Harry Kane will be at the club next season. With the way that Spurs are going, with the lack of planning or everything that's going into this club, with Conte going through what he's going through, I mean, can you see Harry Kane pushing for a move this summer?
I mean, a lot is up in the air at the moment. It all depends who the new manager is and all that kind of business, how we finish the season. A lot of that is dependent on it.
Are we going through that again, depending on the new manager? Because like we said Conte is his last chance saloon.
Correct, but because of other circumstances, like I don't see anyone spending 100 million. If we're going to demand 100 million, well, it says £100 there, but if we're going to demand if we're going to demand 100 million from up front as well, and no installments, just up front 100 million, no one's paying that. So obviously he can kick up a fuss all he wants, but I don't think he's going to be leaving for that, in my opinion. So I do think there's a good chance now, especially if he's one of the players, as I said, who agrees with Conte. Why, if he agrees with Conte and he's seeing that and he's seeing a dressing room turn on him, how's that going to make him feel when he's one of the ones who believes in Conte and is a winner, and he's one of the players who demands more from his teammates? How is that going to make him feel sticking around and wanting this mediocre culture? Of course, he's going to want one out, but it's not that simple at this point.
We saw 2 years ago when he did that interview with Gary Neville, he wanted to go to Man City. He didn't put in that transfer request, but it was clear for everyone that he wanted to go.
We saw with his performances, he didn't want to be there.
So 2 years down the line, nothing's changed at this football club. Do you not think Harry Kane really does go out there and push for that move now, if things stay the same way they are and don't get any better?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that's going to happen. 100%. Obviously, it depends on what happens when Conte leaves and how we react and what we actually do. But it's going to take some hell of a convincing to Kane to say, look, if you stick with us, we can get back on the right track. And I think it's going to be a case of him probably running down his contract. I think that's probably going to be the case. He'll just give it 1 year and then leave on a free. I can easily see that being the situation.
And if he does push for that move and we say no and we stick to our guns, 100 million up front or nothing, do we really want Harry Kane here next season, showing the same mentality that he did the first half of the season when we had Nuno?
Definitely not. That would be a horrendous situation. So
if he does kick up a fuss, then surely we should just let him go, for less than 100 million for whatever teams are willing to pay for him.
If he puts in a transfer request, there's a good argument that we should, 100%, because if he's got 1 year left on his contract and he's going to play a whole season like he did for that 6 months, for those few months under Nuno, then absolutely we're cutting off our nose to spite our face if that's going to be the case. But knowing Kane, if it is a new manager he can get behind, not necessarily saying he's going to be convinced to stay, but at least he might be convinced to perform while he's there.
All right, let's move on. A bit of a transfer rumour for you today. Rodrigo de Paul of Atletico Madrid and Argentina. Calcio Mercato saying that Tottenham are seriously considering making a move for Rodrigo de Paul in the summer and forget this one, and are prepared to pay up to 26.5 million for Argentinian.
Yeah.
And just bear in mind that Atletico Madrid signed him for 38 million euros in 2021, and he's got a market value of 40 million euros.
So of course we are. Of course we're only prepared to spend 26 million. I like Rodrigo de Paul. He's a bit of a shit house. He's a tenacious midfielder. I don't see the value of bringing him in if Conte's going to leave. I feel like he's a very Antonio Conte kind of midfielder. I don't see the value in talking about these kind of transfers while our managers are up in the air. Like if Enrique comes, I don't think he's going to want Rodrigo de Paul. He's going to want a different profile. So whatever. And also 26 million, yeah. That's
26 and a half, please.
It's the most classic Tottenham bid I've ever heard in my life.
Even the rumours are getting Spursy now. But last but not least, a bit of an injury update. We don't have timescales yet, but Ben Davies and Richarlison have both withdrawn from the Wales and Brazil squads respectively due to their injuries at St Mary's on the weekend. So we'll have to wait and see how long they are out for, but that is the news. They have pulled out from the squad. And that is your Tottenham update for today. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any thoughts regarding any of the news stories we brought to you today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always,
come on you Spurs.